This is Howie. She was my pet mouse when I was a freshman at Amherst College. And this is where I found her, the intersection of Blue Hills Road and Route 9 in Amherst, Massachusetts. I was out for a run one day in November, and I ran north through town and then down the big hill and past the shopping area, and was running back up the hill along the busy Route 9 when a plumber's van cut me off in the crosswalk, almost ending my life where I stood. And as I looked down, for some reason, just catching my breath, there was Howie. I can't really explain what I did next to this day, but I bent over and I put my hand down in front of the mouse in the crosswalk, and she climbed up into it. Not sure what I expected to happen there, but it wasn't that. But so all of a sudden I'm holding a mouse, and my run is definitely over because I'm not running anywhere holding a mouse. And it's a 15-minute walk back to my dorm from this point. And the mouse seems pretty cold. She's shivering a little bit. And it's then that I realized that I'm about a 1-minute walk away from the house of some family friends that I had promised I would come visit after I got settled into my dorm and then proceeded to not visit ever. So I wandered over to their house holding a mouse. I show up to their door after being completely incommunicado for 3 months, and they say, hey, and I say, hey, and I say, I have a mouse, and they say, oh, do you? And I say, yeah, I do, right here in my pocket, want to see? And they said, yeah, cool, and I showed them the mouse, and they said, well, we have cats, but you want to come in anyway? And I said, yeah, I'll take care of the mouse, it'll be fine. And so we tried to give her some cheese, and she was sort of into that, and we tried to give them some peanut butter, and she was way more into that. And the cats were also pretty into this whole scenario, so I didn't stay in chat very long, just long enough to catch up and promise to come back later, which I would not do. But anyway, they gave me some peanut butter for the mouse, and I wandered the rest of the way on home with the mouse in my hoodie pocket. I had promised that I would work on a group project for my Chinese class that evening, so I left the mouse in a box in my room for a couple hours with nothing more than a little bit of peanut butter. I didn't really think about where she might go to the bathroom, luckily she didn't. But as soon as my group project meeting was over, I decided that I needed to get a cage for this mouse and some kind of bedding. And if you are looking for pet supplies in Amherst, Massachusetts, in 2012, there was no better place to look than Dave's Soda and Pet City. If, unfortunately for you, you have not heard about Dave's Soda and Pet City, let me tell you, the story that I heard initially was that a man named Dave came to town and he was looking to open a store, and he did some market research, and Dave saw that there was a need for a place to buy pet supplies and pets, but he also saw that there was a need for a place to buy soda and soda accessories. And Dave said, well, I can do both of those things. And he opened a store called Dave's Soda and Pet City. And it was so successful that for a little while there, Dave had a whole chain thing going. Dave's Soda and Pet Cities all across Massachusetts. Unfortunately, a couple years ago, Dave's Soda and Pet City was taken over by Smithfield Pet Supply. And I'm not sure if they still sell the soda. I really hope they do. But while it lasted, it was a wonderful place to go buy both your mouse some food and also some really nice bougie soda that you can normally only find at the food co-op. So, once I'd bought Howie a cage and some bedding and some food and a water bottle and a wheel for her to run on and a ball for her to run around the room in, I had a new roommate. I already had a roommate, unfortunately. His name was Sam. We got along pretty well. Sam was a lacrosse bro, which is a well-known species of Amherst College student. Lacrosse bros love, above all things, lacrosse. They also love Chell, which is what they call the NHL video game franchise. And as far as I can tell, they also love wearing dress shirts for any and all occasions. And Sam wasn't my best friend, but we were very reasonable roommates. He let me eat some of his peanut M&Ms. I didn't stay up too late or keep the lights on if I did. And every once in a while I would catch him playing with Howie, which was very sweet. Even if he hadn't had any say in this whole thing, he was an enthusiastic or, well, at least willing mouse parent. Honestly, Howie wasn't really a bad roommate. She wasn't that stinky as long as I changed the bedding kind of regularly. And though people had told me that she might be a little bit annoying at night because mice are more or less nocturnal, she really wasn't that bad. There was one time I thought she was. Let's see, where does this story start? Well, the story I guess actually starts with, I knew a bunch of people at Amherst College who really liked to meditate. And I liked to meditate a little bit, but I didn't feel like going to meditation club. But meditation club, they were cool people. And they had scored themselves a bunch of tickets to go see the Dalai Lama speak at Middlebury College in Vermont. The only problem was, being avid meditators, only one of them could drive. And so they needed another driver. And so I was drafted to go see the Dalai Lama. Obviously, if I drove up all the way up there with them, I was going to get myself a ticket. And that was very cool. I'm like, who's going to say no to seeing the Dalai Lama? So I agreed to go on this trip. I arranged to have a car. The only catch is, to get there on time, we have to leave at 3:30 in the morning. With the way I was living my life at that point, there was no way I was ever getting to bed before, 11. And I resigned myself to getting about 4 hours of sleep before doing a long drive. But it had been a long day, and I just could not get to sleep. And the worst thing was, Howie would not stop for once. She's normally pretty good, but she would not stop running on it, and it was just squeaking. And I was lying in bed trying to sleep despite it, because I didn't really know how to get her to stop. But eventually, it just squeaking was too much. And so I leaned over, looked under the bed to tell her to shut up or something. And I realized that she actually was in solidarity, sleeping. The squeaking was not, in fact, coming from her wheel. It was coming from directly above me, where someone was having very vigorous and long-lasting sex in a very squeaky dorm bed. I put on some pajamas and I went upstairs and really strongly considered knocking on their door as I stood in front of it, but then the squeaking stopped and my problem was solved and I didn't have to deal with that. So I went back and got about 2 hours of sleep before driving the rest of the way up to see the Dalai Lama. And of course, on 2 hours of sleep and a long drive, the second His Holiness started talking, I conked out and only woke up at the very end of the Q&A. I will say, the most peaceful nap I've ever had. His presence must have been doing something, but what did he say? I will never know. It was a good nap. But this is all to say, the one time I thought Howie was being a bad roommate, it wasn't even her. Not long after that, I did need to find somewhere to lodge Howie for winter break, because I was going home, and I sure as heck wasn't flying with a mouse back to my house full of cats. And one of my friends, Steven, was very willing to take her on, even if I think he didn't quite know what he was getting himself into. He agreed to take her for winter break, and so I went to his house up in the hills outside of Amherst to drop her off before my grandma drove me to the airport a couple days after the semester ended. And I don't remember the exact details of this anymore, but I'm pretty sure I ended up staying home for like 2 weeks longer than I expected to. And by the time I was telling Steven this, there was nothing he could really do or say. So he ended up taking care of this mouse for a little bit longer than he'd been expecting to. And he was very cool about it. To this day, I would buy Steven Colt a beer anywhere, anytime. Steven, if you ever want to go mountain biking and you're listening to this, hit me up. Unfortunately, my time with Howie was not as long as I might have hoped. And no, don't worry, this is not a dead mouse story, or at least it doesn't necessarily end that way. But in the spring of 2013, towards May-ish, I dropped out of Amherst College and took a medical leave to deal with some mental health stuff, and I sure as heck, like I said earlier, was not taking this mouse back to a house full of cats. And so I needed to figure out who was going to take in a mouse. And I had been dating a girl for a few months who was an Amherst student and had a couple weeks left of the semester. And I said, hey, Eleanor, I'm getting kicked off of campus. Can you hold on to the mouse for a little bit? And she said, I mean, yeah, I guess, but this is not a long-term solution, you know, right? Like, I also have cats. I'm also going home. You're going to need to find somebody. And I said, oh, yeah, sure. I will totally find somebody to take care of this mouse. Dear listener, I did no such thing. And so, a couple weeks later, when the end of the semester rolled around and Eleanor needed to get on a plane back home, and no one had stepped up to take the mouse, she did what anybody would have done and what I should have done 2 weeks before, which was take the cage outside and open the door and let her go. At the time, I was furious. I imagined a hawk swooping down and grasping Howie in its talons within 10 yards of her leaving her cage that she'd known as a home for so long. But, really, Eleanor was just doing a hard thing that I should have done. No one was going to take my weird little street mouse. And recently, I realized that Eleanor actually gave me a great gift. Because Eleanor did the thing that I had been unwilling to do, I don't actually know what happened to Howie. And so, in my mind, she escaped and thrived. She took the survival skills that she developed living underneath my bed, running in place and eating peanut M&Ms, and she went out there and dodged the predators and found herself a mouse partner and had some beautiful mouse babies. And even though she certainly has passed away at this point, mice don't live for 10 years, she has descendants out there that are strong and thriving, and maybe one of these days, one of them will come across an Amherst student in the crosswalk and go home with them again.